Well, our next guest is a legend of the music industry and is behind some of the biggest and most loved songs of the last 5 decades. You know his songs, and you certainly know the man who sings them. It was a fateful meeting in 1967 that brought talented lyricist Bernie Taupin together with Reg Dwight, a then unknown composer and pianist who'd eventually become Elton John. The rest is history. Bernie and Elton going on to form one of the most famous songwriting duos of all time. With a career spanning more than 50 years, Bernie has plenty of stories to share from his incredible life, and he's doing just that in his official memoir, Scattershot: Life, Music, Elton and Me.
We all know those songs, don't we? And we are so thrilled to say the man, the myth, the legend, the excellent Bernie Taupin joins us live now. Bernie, legend!
Bernie!
We didn't think it was possible to love you anymore, and look at you. You look terrific. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm still getting over that kid's mullet.
Good, was it, right? Couldn't get more Aussie.
That was awesome.
Now, your memoir chronicles an incredible life that you've led. When you look back at it, what strikes you most?
Oh my gosh, that's hard to pinpoint. I mean, pretty much all of it. I mean, there's parts of every aspect and every kind of decade. There's always something that jumps out, but to pinpoint any particular event is really hard. I mean, that's why I really made a point of sort of transversing all of the decades, you know. I mean, there's that, you know, John there on stage at Madison Square Garden, all of these pictures that you're putting up, everything resonates with me. I don't want to just say any particular point in time because they're all important.
Bernie, I've read your book. It's so like you, and the way that you've been such a professional, so beautifully written.
Thank you.
And when you started out, did you ever think that it would lead to something like this? When you answered that ad in the paper,
incredible,
that it would lead to anything like this ever?
Well, you know, it's funny because one of the oddest questions that I guess asked recently is, you know, why write it now? Which seems kind of ridiculous considering that, well, I'm certainly not going to write it at the start of my career. I'm not going to write it halfway through it. You know, I'm 73 years old, so it seems like the most sensible time to put down in words. Well, that sounds like a song, doesn't it?
You're a natural. Who would have thought?
Oh, my gosh, I'm going back to my roots. No, I mean, you know, it makes sense to write something like this now. And as I make it very clear in the book, I never wanted to write an A to Z linear kind of book. I just wanted it to be all over the place, which is kind of like my mental capacity. You know, I'm everywhere at the same time. So it was just kind of a no-brainer to do it now. And it was incredibly satisfying to gather up all that information over all of the years. And the wonderful thing about writing the book was, as I wrote it, things became clearer to me. I remembered things that I didn't think I would ever remember, and it jogged my memory. And the writing process was so wonderful and fun.
What you just said there, you're everything all at once. I mean, it's something so many people can relate to. And I think, you know, songwriters are among the brightest people on earth. I've always found that.
Oh, don't believe that.
I do believe that, because you're able to, in a very clever way, really capture the imagination. I mean, when we look at, you know, a lot of your lyrics, if we were to hone it down to Rocket Man, for example, I mean, what's the inspiration behind that and the genesis of that?
Well, the great thing about being a songwriter is you're allowed to invent things. You're allowed to create stories. I mean, I've always thought of myself as somewhat I've always thought of myself not so much as a songwriter, but as a storyteller. It's like being a cinematographer. I've captured things throughout my life, and you just mentioned Rocket Man, and I've made it very clear over the years that that was inspired by a short story by Ray Bradbury from a book of science fiction stories called The Illustrated Man. And it just, again, it's like I see things every day that inspire me, and things are inspired by stories that I've read, books that I've read, people I've met, people I've seen in airports, everywhere. I'm a chronicler. That's my job.
I always wondered, your song is one of my favourites, just the simplicity and the beauty of it. I always wondered what came first, the chicken or the egg with songwriting, the music or the lyric. But you were 17 when you wrote that song.
Yeah.
How do you, I mean, it's the hardest thing in the world to write something simple.
Well, yeah, but don't you think if you listen to that song and you ingest that lyric, it sounds like it's written by somebody who was 17. It's written by an innocent, virginal novice, as opposed to songs that came later on. I always say that your song is the bookend of a song like Sacrifice, which is the same character, but only 40 years later on, after they've been through the mill of romance, love, and deceit. And so, yeah, I mean, the thing is, when I wrote your song, I was completely, as I say, a novice in every imaginable way. And yeah, it was written literally at the breakfast. If you've seen Rocket Man, the movie, the way it's portrayed in that, even though the movie in itself is a fantasy, there are several incidents in the movie that are actually very factual. And the scene where we're writing Rocket Man, where I'm writing at the table, and I give it to Elton, and he goes, "This has got egg on it." I don't know how many people caught that in the movie, but that's absolutely true. It did. It had coffee stains on it. And he took it in the next room, and wham, bam, the rest is history.
Bernie, Sarah and I are just such students of your lyrics and songs. If you just look a little deeper into any of those songs, you see a glimpse of your soul. Because whatever you were going through, that's what we saw. Even with Sacrifice, I couldn't believe, this is my favourite Elton John, Bernie Taupin song, but when you look at that and you listen to it, after all of these years, there must be a great deal of satisfaction in it, even though Sacrifice, I was interested to read, was the first UK solo #1 for you guys, given all the hits. I mean, I just couldn't believe that.
Well, yeah, I'm not somebody who follows our career chart-wise. That's Elton's job. I mean, he's much more capable of being a chronicler of our success. I mean, this is a guy that knows every place he's ever played over the past 5 decades. He could tell you how many people fit in the auditorium, what date it was. I mean, it's remarkable, where I'm completely the opposite. I'm clueless as to, if you say to me, if you mention one of our better known hits, I have no idea where it placed on the chart. I never paid any attention to that. I mean, being a songwriter is all about bearing your soul. And that's, as I say, that's my job. That's my preference. And that's what I like doing. Statistics don't really enter into it for me.
Yeah, right.
It's so beautiful to see the way your lyrics and Elton's melodies came together so well, so brilliantly, and we're all the beneficiaries of that. I mean, if we look at another song, I'm Still Standing, there was a conception there that you'd written that about Elton, but that's not actually the case.
Not if you read the book. You find out that's not true. No, it was basically a sort of kiss off to a former girlfriend, but as I always say, I prefer that people read their own interpretations into lyrics or songs in general, and I would much prefer to think that that song is about my partner's sort of will to survive at a certain point in time, against all the odds that were thrown against him at a certain period, whether it was addiction or blowback from the press. It makes much more sense, because my animosity towards somebody at a certain point in time is completely irrelevant, and that particular person is now a very, very dear friend of mine. So I'd rather people think of it as Elton's anthem rather than my animosity.
I want to ask you, and I'm sure you've been asked a million times before, but please indulge Sarah and I. What is the piece of work, the song that you're most proud of?
Well, I always quote Duke Ellington and say the one I'm going to write tomorrow.
So there's more to come, Bernie. There's a tease.
But having said that, yeah, I think you just mentioned it. Sacrifice is probably one of my favorite songs we've ever written.
Hey, Bernie, it's
Stunning,
a great pleasure. I could talk to you for literally hours. Thank you so much for sparing the time.
Beautiful
I've
man.
read your book. It is absolutely, like you, magnificent. Scattershot Life Music, Elton and Me is out today, and you'll find it everywhere. Please, do yourself a favour and go out and read it. Great pleasure to talk to you, my man. Thank you so much
Well,
for being
thank
with
you,
us.
guys, and
you, Bernie.
hi to all my lovely friends in Oz. I love you guys.
All
Take
right.
care.
Yeah, we know you know as well. Thanks, Bernie.
See you, Bernie. Wow, what a
Okay,
thrill.
bye.
Isn't he beautiful?
What a
Could talk to
thrill.
him for hours on
Me
end.
too.
Hey there, Today fans. Sarah and
What's my name again?
oh my God, Carl.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel, though. Subscribe now for more news, special reports, and amazing Aussie stories.
And Carl misbehaving,
Whoa,
of course.
that never happens.
always happens.
What's she talking about?